Hey guys, it's Coach Gaglione here. This is another edition of our Powerlifting for the People podcast. Today we're talking about one of the most kind of overlooked aspects of training. This is kind of our part of our nutrition pillar series. We're going to talk about stress management. This is going to be critical for your health, your longevity, your performance, and if you're trying to improve body composition in particular, and your performance as well. This is also going to go hand in hand with sleep. I was kind of going back and forth on the order in which we release these because I would say if your stress management is not in order, it's going to be highly unlikely that your sleep is going to be good quality as well. So if sleep is something you're struggling with, also make sure you're kind of not overlooking the stress levels in your life. So I'm going to try to be not super technical because, again, that is not really my expertise anyway. This is an area that in my life personally is something that probably needs to be worked on the most. So a lot of the things that we kind of talked about in the sleep podcast, the sleep episode, is going to go hand in hand in here. So the first thing I just want to kind of talk about really quick and just kind of reiterate is the difference between the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system and kind of when you'd want to have those different parts of your nervous system kind of be more active or be in more of a parasympathetic or a sympathetic state. So basically when we're getting to train, we're hitting the chalk bowl, we're getting ready for that PR lift, that's the time where we kind of want to be sympathetic. We want our fight and flight on, we want to be kind of really charged. So like anything else, there's going to be a cost and a benefit to that. The benefit is that your body's going to be very hyped up and ready, you're going to be firing on all cylinders. The negative is that it takes up a lot of energy. So you're only going to be able to be in that state for a short period of time. So if we're doing something like an explosive sprint, you're playing in a high-level sports, you're a power lifter, a weightlifter, those are the times when you're kind of going for that big third attempt or personal record, personal best performance. Being sympathetic is going to be important. If you're in a life-threatening situation, you got to lift, get out of a burning building, you got to lift a car up to save somebody, whatever the case may be. Being in a sympathetic state is going to help you perform at your highest level. For the other times, when we're trying to recover, we're trying to rest, we're trying to digest and kind of absorb nutrients and recover, we want to be more relaxed, we want to be more parasympathetic, we want to focus on rest and recovery and relaxation. Unfortunately, even if as you're listening to this right now, the fact that you're listening to this is providing another stimulus. The thing that we carry with us all the time, if you're watching on YouTube, I just showed my phone. We have this basically computer in our pocket at all times, so we are constantly being stimulated. If your notifications are constantly buzzing, you're constantly getting this kind of heightened, you're getting this dopamine effect, you're getting this feedback that kind of is exciting when you get a text message, when you get a like on Instagram, when you get a DM, when you get an email. So I would say number one, just kind of be aware of how much stimulus you're actually getting. And if you feel like your stress levels are higher than normal, it's going to be really important that we kind of take some of that stimulus away, especially when we're trying to have a block of time or a day at a time when we're trying to focus on lowering our stress and lowering our recovery. When it comes to traveling, when it comes to having a fight with our significant other, a stressful day at work, a 900-pound squat, stress is stress when it comes to the nervous system. And obviously, a 900-pound squat is going to give you a different adaptation than a fight with your significant other. But from a nervous system standpoint, it's still going to kind of knock you down a notch in terms of recovery. It might not affect your muscular system and skeletal system in the same way. Obviously, if you're doing a heavy weightlifting session, you're not going to, versus having a stressful day at work, you're not going to get the same loading on your joints, your tendons and ligaments, and your muscular system. But kind of from a nervous system standpoint, stress is stress, and your body doesn't really know where the stress is coming from. So in terms of your stress recovery and adaptation cycle, it's really important that we have certain days that are higher stress days and certain days that are lower stress days and more recovery days in order to kind of match that stimulus recovery adaptation cycle. Oftentimes, especially if you're working with a coach and the program is designed intelligently and there's deload weeks there and there's weeks of higher volume, there's weeks with more stimulus, there's weeks with less stimulus, there's weeks where we're tapering, there's weeks where we're kind of focused more on recovery and kind of pulling back. But there's this balance between we want to try to, sometimes we might think we're overtraining, but in fact we're actually under recovering. And I would say most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time, most people are probably under recovering. It's not necessarily overtraining. Especially if you have intelligent progressions in volume, intensity, and things like that. You know, if you're going from like 1 set of 5 to 10 sets of 5, and there's an acute spike in volume, then yeah, and you're doing like 2 or 3 sessions a day, and you're just literally not giving yourself a break, then that would be a situation where maybe there's overtraining as a consideration. But if you listen to our training, our kind of training methods section, which hopefully you did, if you're doing 3 or 4 days a week of weight training and 3 or 4 days a week of light steady state cardiovascular training, it's pretty unlikely that you're going to be overtraining, but it is certainly likely that you could be under recovering if you have a really stressful life. So I want you guys to consider that. Assuming that we're in the gym for an hour, I know especially for powerlifters, we might be in the gym for an hour and a half, 2 hours, or even 3 hours sometimes because of the amount of work we're doing or the amount of rest we need to take. But let's just say we're in the gym for an hour a day. We want to focus on the other 23 hours. What's going on in those other 23 hours? How is your sleep? How is your job? How is your home life? How are your relationships? So I want to kind of go through some things, and I'm going to give you some practical takeaways. If you do have specific days that you have planned for lowering stress or kind of doing stress management, I think I just want to give some practical takeaways really quickly, and then we'll kind of go into a more overarching theme because I just want to make sure I don't forget these things. So doing some like light yoga practice, not necessarily with the intent of increasing your mobility or doing it as a workout, but just using some different kind of quote unquote mobility drills or stretching drills to get you in a more parasympathetic state, a relaxed state, can be very helpful. So very low level floor yoga. We have a lot of videos with Emily Raber, who's our kind of resident yoga expert. She has as many years, over a decade of experience in yoga practice, and she has as much experience in yoga as I have in powerlifting. So highly respect her knowledge, and we got some great stuff with her. We'll include the links in the description. So we have a podcast with my sister talking about nature therapy and the kind of the benefits of being outside and being in nature and unplugging from technology and being in just kind of the natural world, and just walks in general where you're unplugging from technology, and just different types of breathing and kind of box breathing drills and parasympathetic breathing techniques. And we'll probably do like a video on cool down and stuff as well at some point. So those are some things that you could do. Other things that I have not experienced yet, but I know other people have, is you could do like deprivation tanks and things like that. But just think about activities that you can do where you're just really trying to downregulate and unplug from technology and not get a lot of stimulus from outside sources. So those are going to be really key. So when it comes to stress management, number one is your mental approach and your mindset. It's always good to come from a positive place, and there could, we're coming from a stress management standpoint. This is not necessarily from a performance standpoint. I'll be the first to admit, and if you've ever listened to like someone like Andy Frisella talk about this and other high level people, I think there could be some value in quote unquote like kind of harnessing the darkness or kind of embracing the dark side a little bit. So what I mean by that is to get motivated, sometimes maybe there was a coach that didn't believe in you, or maybe your parents didn't believe in you. And I think that there is some merit to that when it comes to like kind of getting some motivation to get started. But in general, I think it's always good to come from like a positive place. So I just want to kind of like throw that out there, and just that may be an exception to the rule. There may be a time and a place where you can kind of use some of that like negative energy and kind of turn it into like a positive outlet. But in general, I think it's good to always take a positive approach to life. I think it's important to see the silver lining. I think it's important to see the good in people. I think it's important to see the good in yourself. Even like the worst people, I think, that we may say that maybe like bad on paper, I think everyone has some good qualities to them, and I think it's important that we just always try to have a positive approach. When we're kind of giving constructive criticism, when we're critiquing ourselves, I think it's always important to kind of frame things in a positive way. When it comes to your mindset in particular, I think it's really important that we focus on things that we can control, not things that we can't control. And at the end of the day, the only thing that we can control is ourselves. You can't focus on what other people do. You can't focus on what's going on in the outside world. But you can control how you react to it. You can control your attitude and your effort. I'll say that again. You can control your attitude and your effort. You can't control things like your genetics. You can't control things like your upbringing. You can't control things like your current environment. Obviously, you can move and you can change your environment. But in general, if you could focus on having a positive attitude and giving good effort every single day over time, being consistent, focusing on the positive, that's going to really be helpful. So part of it is just your general approach. If someone is really kind of struggling with their performance anxiety or just they have a lot of negative self-talk, we're also going to include links in the description for our mental training DVD. We have a course, and it shows you how to kind of, if you're kind of interested in kind of improving your sports psychology, maybe you have performance anxiety, maybe you just have like a negative outlook to training, maybe you're just kind of in a mental rut. We're going to give you some specific strategies, and I'll talk about a few of those today, but I would highly recommend you go through that course. It's excellent. It's something that I use when I was kind of in a rut in my training, and it's something that I use a lot of the techniques and strategies. So there is a lot of sports psychology you could also do if you're kind of struggling like on a day-to-day basis with your kind of mindset. Because if you can frame yourself in a good mindset when you go into training, that's going to lower your stress and allow you to perform better and have better results inside and outside of the gym. So one of the biggest things when we're talking about managing like that 23-to-1 rule, so focusing on the other 23 hours of the day that you're not in the gym, is managing like your personal relationships, and this is probably the biggest thing that I need to work on and still need to work on. And there's many reasons for that, which I don't necessarily need to get into today, but I'll share some of my personal struggles as well. Anything that kind of triggers like negative energy or triggers anxiety or maybe triggers depression. If you are someone that struggles with anxiety and depression, and I've certainly I've talked about this a few times, not at length, but I've had bouts of it that have been diagnosed. I have bouts of it that have been very, very serious. And again, I haven't gone into great detail, but I just do want to share with you guys that I have ups and downs all the time, especially with my health issues that I've had and my weight loss. Again, for those, if it's your first time listening, I've been as heavy as 340 pounds, so definitely when it comes to like kind of self-esteem and body image issues, I get all that, and having issues with my family, issues with like past relationships, both friendships and romantic relationships. I've had a lot of ups and downs. I've had a lot of people let me down in the past, and I've let some people down, and I haven't handled things the best. So it goes both ways. So things like therapy can be really effective, especially if you can afford it. But definitely just talking through things. I think especially when it comes to relationships, I think especially this day and age, everything is very impersonal. Through text, through social media, through DMs, and we lose kind of the tone, we lose kind of the context a lot of times. So I think communicating with people face to face and having real life, IRL, in real life, positive relationships and positive interactions with people face to face, and being more direct with our communication, even if it's hard. Just really expressing how you feel, because I think a lot of times, especially a lot of our listeners are men. A lot of our followers are men and women, but men especially. We're like kind of taught to kind of, not talk about our feelings and not talk about how we feel and not communicate directly. And I'm guilty of this too, because I just, as a coach, I always want people to be happy and I want to bring positivity. But I think it's important that we communicate with people directly. And that's something I'm still working on now. And there's a time and a place for like some of those hard conversations, and I think it's important that we do that. And now, whether it be friends, family, or acquaintances, I do think it's important. I do kind of believe in kind of karma and kind of giving out what you'll kind of attract what you kind of give out to the universe and things like that. So if you're constantly kind of attracting those negative, toxic people, you need to kind of look inward and see like why that's the case. And if you're constantly kind of letting those people into your life, I think you need to ask yourself why that's the case. Is it me, or is it just maybe you need to change your environment, maybe you need to get into a different situation? But it's obviously a little bit trickier when it comes to family, but I think it's really important that we manage those relationships, and sometimes you got to cut people out of your life. If you're in a toxic relationship, whether it be a friendship or a romantic relationship, that is going to be a huge hindrance on your recovery and your success, not only in the gym but outside the gym as well. And it's going to really affect your overall happiness. So you could be doing everything right, you could be eating right, you could be trying to sleep right, but if you have a toxic relationship, or if you're in a career that maybe you really don't like, you need to start working towards steps to get yourself in a better frame of mind. And if you're not really sure where to start, I think it's important to talk to somebody. I think that's part of coaching. A lot of people say they do coaching and programming and all this stuff, but part of a coach is going to help you to navigate those things. And depending on the relationship with your coach, there's maybe some things that are outside of our scope and maybe not appropriate to talk about. But in general, I know with our athletes, if I want to know what's going on in their personal life to an extent that they feel comfortable talking to, with me, and I hope that that everyone that's listening to this would feel comfortable talking to me about it if I am their coach. Because what's going outside, maybe they're expecting their first child, maybe they're about to buy a new house, or they have a really important life decision to make. Maybe things are not going so good with their spouse. Maybe things are not going so good financially. Financial stress is a big one. We have to manage all these things outside of our life. So it's really important that we kind of understand that there's going to be stress that comes from our career, there's going to be stress that comes from our personal relationships, and there's going to be stress that comes from our training. And we need to manage all these things the best we can. And if one of those three things, the stress starts to increase, the stress from others need to decrease. So if, let's say, like you're having extra life stress because you're having a child, which is a great form of stress, but it's still stress. Maybe your training volume needs to go down for a bit. Maybe you're trying to have a promotion for you have a promotion coming up for your job, or maybe you're looking for a new job. Maybe your training stress needs to come down a little bit. Maybe your training stress from your personal relationships maybe you can't go out as much. You can't be as social, just for example. So you need to all those things need to give and take. You can't have high stress for all areas. You can't have high stress for your career. You can't have high stress for your personal relationships, and you can't have high stress for your training all at the same time. That's when you're going to lead to burnout. That's going to lead to injuries, and that's going to lead to a lot of heartache. So something's going to have to give in those areas. So look at the stress that's coming from your career, your personal relationships, and your training. Okay. I want to continue to talk about some things that we could do to get yourself in a positive frame of mind. Admittedly, I still need to start doing this, and I need to kind of do this more. But any type of journaling is going to be really effective, and I'm going to give you some different strategies that you could do. We talk a little bit about journaling in our mental training DVD in more detail, and give you some exercises. So again, if you're interested in learning more about that, check out the links below. It's be highly effective if you're having trouble. So there's a lot of different things that you could do, but there's many different people that are better at this than me. But just something when you wake up, you could write down some things, and you could visualize some things. You could do some breathing as well with this, or meditation. When you wake up, write down like 1 to 3 things that you're grateful for. If you want something specific, you could do something that you're grateful for in your training, your personal relationships, your career, or it could be something very general, like, I'm grateful to have a roof over my head. And you can get as specific as you want, but just the whole point of that kind of gratitude deal is that you're starting the day off with something positive, and you're recognizing that right away. So by starting the day off on a positive note, you're already going to be setting yourself up for success. I also think it's really important that we have our electronics and our phone off for a certain period of time. And if possible, because I know everyone's different, I know like a lot of people do work from social media, but I would try to get something done. Like, I'm kind of guilty of this too, but try to find patterns that when you like always go to your phone. If you go to your phone like first thing when you wake up, that's probably a problem. That's like an addiction, and you're looking for that stimulation. But if you open like your email, and maybe it's a bad email, or if you open your text messages and it's negative text messages right away in the morning, that's going to really set up your day for failure. So start your day with something positive. Leave your phone, leave your email, and try to leave your emails and your messages for later in the day. If you're expecting some sort of important phone call or there's an emergency in your life, I understand. But in general, try to leave because we can't control what people send us, but we can control what we do. So you want to start the day off with something positive, and you want to try to eliminate checking your phone and checking like messages and email first thing in the morning, and also last thing before you go to bed. So that's the next part we're going to talk about. We want to end the day with something positive. So one of the things we talk about in the mental training DVD, and again, if you want more information on the process itself and these activities, I would check out the links and check out that program. It's something called the Well. All right, so there's an example right there. My phone just went off, so hopefully that'll stop. We want to start and end the day with something positive. So one of the things that you could do, especially if you're trying to focus on improving your training quality, write down the best thing that happened today. Write down the best thing that happened in your training. Write down the best thing that happened in your life, your personal life, your career, with your relationship, whatever you want. Whatever areas you want to focus on, you can focus on all 3. You can focus on one. Even if it seems really small, write down your biggest win for the day. This is something I talk about this with our online clients. And our online team members. Not everyone does this, but I feel like the people that do kind of write down their big wins, they start to stack on those wins and they become more successful. So I'll use myself as an example today. I've been dealing with a shoulder injury, and I'm kind of feeling a little bit down on myself. But I did increase from last week. I did the most weight I ever did since hurting my shoulder. So so I could focus on the negative, or I could choose to focus on the positive. So I'm going to continue to try to choose to focus on the positive. So even though I'm not where I want to be, I did technically make improvement from last week. So I'm going to focus on the positive, not the negative. You could choose to focus on whatever you want. I think it's important to stack on those little wins and keep building forward. Another thing that's really important, especially when you do get down on yourself, is really knowing your why, knowing your purpose, knowing why you're trying to work toward your goal. So having a strong why, you'll figure out the how. So really kind of dig deep, understand like your vision, understanding your purpose in life, understanding why you're kind of working toward these goals. Because we can all get caught up in the numbers of like an 800-pound squat or a 500-pound bench, or an elite total or a national qualifying total. But why are you really doing this? Really dig deep. So for example, maybe you're a parent and maybe you want to set a good example for your kids. That's going to go a lot further to allow you to stick toward your goal. Or maybe you just want to be healthy for your kids and you want to be around for a long time. For me, I always talk about I'm not the best lifter by any means, but I think I really believe that I have great coaching ability, and I believe I help so many people because I lead by example. And I do make mistakes, and I have had hardships, and I don't have, quote unquote, the best genetics. But I've pushed through for a decade. I've been 100 pounds overweight. And I understand what it's like to go through, and I understand what it's like to fail. And I never want someone to go through the same heartache that I went through, and that's like why I became a coach. And I want to show people that you can achieve great things with smart training, and it can really enhance your life. And to be honest, like I said, without training, I don't know where I'd be. I think my depression, my anxiety would really take over. I really believe that. So it's so powerful, the things that we could do, and I want to share that with all of you, and that's why we're doing this podcast. And even though these podcasts aren't maybe as interesting as 9 tips for a 900-pound squat, these are the things that really mean something to me, and I think it's really important just for longevity. So some other things that you could do just to track if you are stressed or not, you could do things like heart rate variability. It's a little bit outside the scope of the podcast, but if you're not sure if you are like stressing out, just get a baseline of your heart rate, and if there's a big spike in your heart rate, like really jumps up day to day, you could use like a finger monitor. You could obviously just take your pulse, but if your heart rate, if there's a big variability day to day in your heart rate, that's usually a key that you're either under recovered or overtraining, or both, some combination. So that's just if you are concerned. I do think that there's some people that can could overdo the data, and that can cause more stress if they're tracking like way too many things. But if you're someone that just really isn't sure if they're stressed or overtraining or under recovering, track your heart rate for a week or two, get a baseline, take the average, and then you can always see if you track your heart rate and if you're feeling run down, you could always test your heart rate. And if there's a big spike and it really increases a lot, usually that if your heart rate is not consistent and it's a big difference. If you look at like Joel Jamieson, he's a better person to learn from that, but I just want that's like an action item that you can take if you're not sure if you're overtraining or if you're overstressed. But most of the time we kind of know. Most of the time we know if we're doing too much, if we have a crazy job, if we're working a night shift, or if we're getting in a fight with our girlfriend, if we're financially stressed. We usually know. So I'm going to leave you with a little story, and I've talked about this before, I believe. I'm not sure if I don't know. I've talked about this before. I'm not sure if ever on the air, but one of my, I have like a lot of tattoos on my body, and I might have talked about them on Instagram and things before, but my last tattoo I got was a Christmas gift to myself, and it's of a lighthouse. And I first heard the story on Andy Frisella's podcast, the MFCEO podcast, great podcast, by the way, if you're looking for practical advice on how to improve yourself, improve your life. And there's a story of the lighthouse and the tugboat and the differences between. And this really hit home with me, especially because, well, you'll see in a second. So basically there's two types of people that you could choose to be. You could be a lighthouse, or you could be the tugboat. Both serve the same purpose. Both help ships come to the shore. The difference is with a tugboat, the tugboat is trying to force the ships to come to shore. The tugboat's going to use a lot of gasoline, it's going to use a lot of parts, it's going to take a lot of effort. Sometimes the ships may not even want to follow them, but they're constantly running around and they're trying to get the ships to come to shore to safety. And they have good intentions. The tugboats have good intentions. And for a long time, and even still, I catch myself. I've been a tugboat in I've been a tugboat in my personal relationships, my romantic relationships. I've been a tugboat in business. And there is a time and a place where sometimes you got to be the tugboat and you got to just make stuff happen. But from a stress standpoint, it's a very, very stressful way to live. And there's a lot of people that could thrive being a tugboat, but for the most part, I think most of us, if we're trying to lower our stress and trying to be better in general, the difference between a tugboat and a lighthouse is the lighthouse will stand its ground, and it'll always shine the light. It doesn't move. It's confident in its purpose. It knows why it's there, and it's going to shine the light. And if the ships want to come to shore, that's great. It knows that it's going to help the ships come to safety. If the ships don't want to come toward the light, that's their problem. They're going to sail right on by, and they're going to not be safe. So for me, as a coach, as a human being, as someone that wants to help people, I'm confident in my ability to help people get stronger. I'm confident in my ability, over 60 lifters getting, nationally ranked in the top 50 in their weight class and division. Over 4 lifters getting top 20 all-time in the world and multiple all-time world records. I don't need to prove that our program works. I don't need to prove my ability to anyone. But what I need to do, I can't force people that want to work with us. I can't force people if they need advice. But what I can do is keep shining my light. And that's why we continue to do these podcasts, no matter if it's 1 view or 1 million views. Because if it helps, if I can shine my light and I help one more person get better, then I know I'm fulfilling my purpose. So I think more people need to focus on being a lighthouse versus a tugboat. Know your purpose, know your why, keep shining your light, keep pushing forward. No matter if any ships come to shore or not, you have a good intentions, you know that you have good light, and you want to continue to shine that light on others. So I'll leave you with that story. I hope it was motivating. It was very motivating when I heard that story, and I kind of paraphrased and I tweaked things a little bit to kind of match the point and the message of this podcast, but I hope that it rang home with you. Just to kind of recap a couple of things, when it comes to stress management, it's really important we kind of cut out those toxic relationships and people from our life. We manage our expectations. If we have high stress in our career and our personal life, we need to lower our training stress. And if we're able to lower our career and personal relationship stress, then we can increase our training stress. That will enhance our recovery. So understand if you are overtraining or under recovering. Understand the difference in when you want to be parasympathetic and relaxed, and when you want to be sympathetic and you want to be hyped up. And utilize modalities like yoga and nature therapy and walking, and make sure you're unplugging from technology. Make sure the technology and just other outside stimulus is not kind of ruining or running your life. Okay. So I know that was a little bit of a deep episode. I know that was a little crazy, a little bit outside powerlifting, but all this stuff goes hand in hand. Like we said, it's not just about the hour you spend at the gym. It's about what you do in the other 23 hours. And we want you to have a great life inside and outside the gym. We want to see you reach all your goals. So if you want to support the program, guys, give us a 5-star review, share the podcast, helps other people find us. Check out the links below, support the program. Thank you so much for listening and for watching. And until next time, stay strong, and we'll see you soon.